Thanks for joining us for this episode of Coffee with Closers, where business leaders share insights on how to build businesses from the ground up and best practices for innovating in their industry.
Hey, Kevin, I'm super excited to have you join me for this episode of Coffee with Closers.
Good to be here, Samuel.
Hey, Kevin, for those in my audience who may not know about you, can you share a little bit about who you are and your background?
Yeah, sure. I am Kevin Clark. I am the SVP of Sales at Synup, which is a software company that lets businesses manage their local digital presence. So all of their listings and profiles, all the reviews across all these different review sites and directories and maps and apps and that kind of thing, and then helps them optimize to get more phone calls and visits to their business. I've been in the SaaS and martech space for going on 15 years now. Lucky to have been a part of 2 successful exits. And like I said, I started my career in the shipping and logistics and kind of worked for a nightmare bureaucratic conglomerate for 2 years. And then, thank God I was fired and I was able to find my first startup and haven't looked back since.
Most certainly. Well, Kevin, I know I've known you for quite some time from your days way back in the day when you were at Yext, and now you're at Synup. Pretty much your entire year always been in the customer service side, on the sales side, and spends your entire life in your career helping people, right, sell better, buy better. So from all your years of being in sales, what have you seen change in terms of the sales process and the sales approach?
Yeah, so I think the biggest change that I've seen and that I'm excited about is really product-led growth, as opposed to sort of hard closing and pushing for the max contract up front. That's kind of how it used to be. But now more and more with lower cost technologies and offerings and freemium offerings available and free trials that so many companies are giving, I think it's great to be able to give a client something for free or onboard them at a low cost, and then earn their trust and expand that revenue by growing users or licenses or whatever that model is. And for me, it all comes back to sort of the philosophy that HubSpot really came up with around inbound. I really love that methodology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think HubSpot also kind of shifted their pricing model probably not too long ago, maybe about 2 years ago or so. They went to that freemium model as well. Before, they never had a free product. I think they started leading with that, the freemium model. I'm pretty sure it's working out just fine for them because I think their stock is close to about $600 now.
Yeah.
So there's something right about that growth strategy. So has there ever been a time as technology evolved and you being in sales where you're ever resistant to change?
I think absolutely. I think every seller is resistant to change, and it's really important for sellers to get over that and realize that change is always going to be there, and things are always going to be changing in sales, but also in life, right? A seller, they get used to a deck, they get used to a pitch, they get used to the value prop on day X, but then really, a couple months later, a couple years later, that is going to change in any dynamic market, in any fast-growing startup today. You're going to have to land and expand. You're going to have to upsell and cross-sell new products, and you're going to have to change your pitch when your branding, your marketing changes. So it's really important, a seller to be open to change, to be willing to fail and struggle, and get through that. Period, and just be constantly learning and constantly honing their skills, which in the long run will make them much better and more adaptive salesperson.
Most certainly, and obviously you've probably seen in your career the introduction of automation coming into the sales, right? We see sales enablement tool and sales outreach tools and social selling tools, all sorts of automation. I mean, not just CRM, right? There's so many things, even just basically advanced calling features that actually can make calls in a predictable way. So you're calling West Coast at a certain time of the day and East Coast at a certain time of the day, and machine pretty much deciding for the rep how they should spend their day. So what have you seen working really well from the automation standpoint, helping sales organizations do a better job in selling?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to harness the technologies that are out there, and there's so many. So that is a challenging decision for sales leaders today, because there's so many technologies out there, and there are just constant tweaks and minor differences between them that you have to evaluate and stay on top of, and then something new gets invented, and all of a sudden you need it, but it's not incorporated into what you have. So I think we really believe in harnessing softwares and technologies to take as much of the hard stuff out of sales as possible. And for me, in my career, the hardest thing has always been cold calling. So utilizing, a dialing tool or automation or a cadencing tool, like, we use SalesLoft, for example, to take that off the plate of the seller and to say, hey, Mr. Seller, when you show up today, here's the 40 dials you have to make today, or here's the 50 emails that are going out, or here are the personal connections that you have to make on LinkedIn that are in their basically activity inbox. They show up and say, give them the autonomy to kind of plan their day out, but say, here's what we expect of you. Here's what the kind of how the numbers stack up for you to achieve your goal, and to make it as easy as possible for them to do that.
Yeah, which brings me to another question, right? With all this sales enablement tools and automation tools, you also have to balance the humanizing aspect of sales, right? Where you don't want to come across like a robot, a lot of same emails, templates being sent, and then there's no empathy or emotion sometimes being communicated through some of these outreaches. So how can you really not lose touch with the humanizing the sales role, and then making sure that you're really still reaching out to a human being? You still need to relate to their business challenges or business needs, and really able to align your offering to meet their business needs.
Yeah, I think, right, the first thing you have to do is to really, have a lot of sort of custom cadences, right, as we have within SalesLoft, that are dedicated to specific ICPs, so that, it's as personalized and customized to their needs as possible, right? So in our case, right, if we're going after agencies, an SEO agency versus a web design agency, we're going to have different content in those emails that's focused on them. But that is an automation. But like you said, and like I stress to my sellers, people buy from people. So you really need to do your research, and you really need to. I think the most important thing is make that initial connection when you do get someone on the phone or onto a demo. I always say, camera on. You want to introduce yourself first and earn that initial trust of talking about the experience and the success you've had with, in our case, hundreds of small businesses or hundreds of other agencies, or other FinServe accounts, right, or other targets there. So it's really important to just do research, be prepared, and to take that limited few seconds or minutes you have to earn someone's trust and have them let their guard down, to do that. Because if you don't and you just jump into a demo, you're just another one of hundreds of emails and SaaS products that they're getting emailed and called about every week.
Yeah, most certainly. And I think sometimes you can tell apart when it's just basically a cookie cutter email versus somebody who really took the time to understand who you are and then very much tailor a message that resonate with you. Just because sometimes someone's job title says one thing doesn't necessarily mean their job function is exactly what you're expecting them to have. So I often get very turned off when I see those LinkedIn outreaches or emails that just doesn't relate to my job function as well.
Well,
so doing the homework really matters.
Absolutely. And here's a little hack. I forget where I saw this on LinkedIn. I wish you could do this on email. But on LinkedIn, I saw somewhere that if you put an emoji or an icon right in front of your name and someone puts you on an automation in LinkedIn, that emoji
you can tell right away
shows up. So you can actually see who's got you on kind of an automation software versus actually writing out a real message. So that's a little inside hack. not that I don't not look at emails that come via cadences or automations, but it's just interesting to notice that when you do get a personal one versus somebody that has just stuck you into the system.
Most certainly, and I've also seen when they have they source their company contact record from some company where they have all the company name is all in caps, and then you can immediately tell when they've just inserted a company name, but it's all in caps, and the rest of the email is proper casing. So take the time to clean up your list before you actually start your cold outreach.
Right.
Do you have any predictions in terms of where the technology is heading the sales, sales team as a whole?
Yeah, I think it's definitely evolving fast. I think, you look at all the, conversation intelligence solutions out there that have raised big money. I think that's a big trend, right? Every call, every conversation that someone at every company has with you is going to be recorded, transcribed, and analyzed, which I love. That's actually one of my favorite tools. We actually use a tool called Wingman, that's similar to like a Gong or a Chorus, but they transcribe, and it really lets you coach at scale and speed up coaching, and do that. So I think that's one of the first things, and I think the second thing is almost, I don't want to say the elimination of salespeople, but again, it's just become so competitive with decision makers getting hundreds or thousands of emails and offerings and calls from these people, that again, moving to a product-led thing where you give them access to a platform, and the seller is not really trying to sell or hard close somebody. They're showing value, and they're forced to say, here's the tool, here's how you use it. Let's earn your trust, and then help them grow into it. So maybe like I said, product-led as opposed to here's a demo and let's close you. Say, hey, let's customize the solution here to show you value, and then grow it from there.
Most certainly. Well, obviously, you've been an individual contributor. You also have been in the sales leadership role, and I know you're kind of the chief revenue officer right now at Synup. So from your observation of, seeing, I'm sure you've seen hundreds of sales leaders across so many different industries as well. What are some of the, success, attributes that you saw in successful sales leaders have that sets them apart?
So I think, the best sales leaders are often very different than the best sellers. I've considered myself a closer, but I'm still evolving as a sales leader. I think I'm a great closer, but I'm really trying to up my game when it comes to managing revenue operations and managing analytics and really optimizing to be able to manage with data. So I think the best sales leaders are people who are doing that. And one of my biggest regrets is not onboarding a revenue operations person kind of immediately to really set things up to my liking, and kind of using certain things just from Salesforce or HubSpot right out of the box. But I think you need to customize a system that fits your sale and your process and your handoff process and your onboarding process, and then scale it from there. Because if you're trying to scale something and there are little kind of standard tweaks that are just, again, out of the box based on the way it came, it's going to slow down your ability to scale that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, can you elaborate on that? Because I think most organizations don't even have those sort of functions that you described, right? Like the sales operations role is becoming very common in the SaaS industries, where those industries are starting to adapt those different functions. You have the SDRs, you have the AE, now you have your sales operations role, and then then your senior VP of sales, and maybe even a CRO. All these different functions that are popping up in SaaS organizations. Why such division of labor is even needed from your perspective?
Just because I think if you are going to, have to take extra steps, the more steps you can eliminate, or the more you can automate and take the human error element or human error risk out of it, the better off you're going to be. So when it comes to, again, like a handoff form in the fields that you're collecting, either during the sales process in order to move something from a specific stage to the next stage, making certain fields required or things like that, getting certain answers, certain KPIs before you initiate, let's say, a pilot or kick off an onboarding, for an account. You need to have those things. And if you're counting on a human to like collect all of these things in a list somewhere, and then the list changes and then it's somewhere else, right? That's hard. But if it's in your system of record, in your CRM, and it's fully customized to your process, you're going to be better off.
Yeah, and I think that's where technology is really a driver.
Yeah, I don't think you necessarily need a sales ops person. You just need someone who's good at optimizing your system or making edits and to the flows in Salesforce. And you could go, hire a contractor on Upwork who has their Salesforce certification or a HubSpot certification, right, or a consultant, and they can kind of do that as a contract project. You don't need to bring on an expensive full-time employee to do that if you know what you want. But there's so many different types of sales processes out there, right, that range from, free onboarding in a day to, deals and sales that take years and years. That, the biggest enterprise deals are, take years to, develop. So you just need to know your process and be able to describe it and lay it out for them, and they can build it.
Yeah, most certainly. And I think one of the areas where I know I fail in the sales function is the follow-up tasks. And I think it piles up pretty quickly. And if you have a more efficient way to prioritize who you should be following up with and who's the most likely to close, or who are some of the past prospects that you need to probably reach back, some ways of kind of unearthing those opportunities and contacts. And if there's technology-enabled ways of doing it, that can make your reps' day more efficient and be more productive, and actually focus on more revenue-producing activities than just a bunch of random to-do list.
Yeah.
So that's definitely where I think the sales operation role plays a great part. I think to talk a little bit more about the individual contributors, because I know obviously you've played that role in the past, and you have so many that are actually working under you. What are some qualities or skills that you observed on the top-performing sales reps that you've hired and raised in your organizations?
So, I think you want, obviously you can teach sales. I believe that anybody can be taught, and I'm a fan of the growth mindset. But I think there are certain, personality traits that, people build over a lifetime that, make them better sellers from the start. And I think you have to have that kind of suave, the ability to really get deep with someone or get personal with someone or make that personal connection and put them at ease is what I see and look for as someone who can, carry on a casual, conversation and make it casual and not just like this robotic demo is, I think, that first and most important thing is you have to earn somebody's trust and put them at ease and be able to shoot the shit with them and have them want to talk to you, have them want to pick up the phone when you call their cell phone to kind of check in on something. And that's something that's hard to earn. But if you're good at, making that personal connection, you'll be that much better once you've earned their trust with your product and built a champion to collaborate with that champion to push it through to get a deal done and overcome the objections that, will definitely come up. But obviously, right, they have to be kind of hardworking. They have to be able to deal with rejection. They have to have the grit that, goes along with the day-to-day of sales, which, sales, in my opinion, is still the hardest job. It sucks. Cold calling sucks. Rejection sucks. But, it can also be, for those people that have those skills, it can be so rewarding and so important and the most lucrative, right, job if you are good at it too.
So I have a question about, you've mentioned some of the qualities of a top performing sales reps. And obviously there are some that can really do a great job when they're on the phone. They have the skill of closing and they know how to build relationships. They know how to earn trust. They do all of those things. But there are some duties of the sales, right, which you kind of alluded to earlier with the sales operation, doing, creating tasks, doing the follow-ups, entering in the data, doing the right steps and putting the deals into the right stage, and all those things are super important. And many of them, sales reps don't really enjoy doing those things. So how can you actually, change the behavior of a person who's really good at their job, and you want to encourage them, and you also don't want to be cutting slack for somebody because they just don't do some of the, not so exciting function of a sales role?
So there's a couple of things you can do. Again, there's, so many cool new tools coming out that can assist with that make it easier, as easy as writing a note in your, little Apple Notes, tab to update Salesforce, as opposed to like going in and updating a Salesforce record and logging a call, which, like you said, is everyone's nightmare to do all those clicks and like log everything. It's horrible, and most people aren't doing it, for all their things. So I haven't used a tool, but there's a tool called, I think, Dooley, that I've been hearing a lot of great things about, where it's as easy as writing in a note and it kind of auto logs all your activities and makes it super easy to log activities. So again, like we talked about earlier, harnessing technology to make that easy. I think the other thing you need to do is just force the behaviors and reward the good behaviors and penalize the bad behaviors. One thing we did recently is implement part of a rep's compensation program is determined by their ability. So 20% of their comp is based on certain activity benchmarks, whether that be going in and sending out the minimum number of emails over the course of on a week by week basis. So it kind of adds up. So they're not just waiting till the last day of the month and sending out 10,000 emails, but like it's a kind of a weekly target where they can plan out their week and they can have a slow day, but then they got to pick it up a few of the other days, right? So for emails, connections, and calls and those things. And then also saying, hey, I want you to go into the conversation intelligence, platform and tag some of your calls for coaching and say, self-coach yourself, but then tag your manager or tag myself, where I came across this objection and, didn't know how to handle it. Or here's what this person said. How would you guys handle that? And then the team gets involved and they're kind of helping and coaching each other, and you can use that, as well. So that's, one thing I did to sort of not just be focused on their sales, not because with sales, people are going to have good months and good quarters and bad months and bad quarters. So they can still make a portion of their money just by doing the things that are going to fill the top of the funnel, which at the end of the day, the best sellers, right? You can be the smoothest, greatest closer, but the smoothest, greatest closers that fill the top of their pipe and are doing the daily activities to do that are the ones that are really succeeding.
So are you also expecting the same level of activities from the AEs as well? Because I can see how an SDR can have very, methodical approach to how many, calls, emails, connections on LinkedIn, all those can work. But somebody who's probably just doing, sales function and just conducting demos and having conversation with prospects that, the meetings that were booked by an SDR, how do you set some sort of a baseline or a benchmark for some sort of activities for them?
So, that's a debate going on in sales right now where, obviously over the past few years, people have moved to this kind of separation where, SDRs set the meetings and sales only runs the meetings. But now I think there's kind of a trend going back where, your best, sellers need you need to be what, like in baseball, a 5-tool player where you need to be able to do it all. So now, and we've done both. We've had a huge team of SDRs. After COVID hit, we cut our SDR team, pretty significantly. We still have a lot of SDRs setting meetings, and we have marketing doing their job, getting inbound meetings. But, I've set the expectation with my sellers that they need to be having a reasonable amount of phone, email, and connection activity going on. And if it's not reasonable, we can have the conversation, right? If you're overwhelmed with other demos, right, and meetings, that's a good thing, and maybe we'll adjust that. But, again, I was a seller too, and sellers aren't that busy, right? They think they're busy. But if you can time box and schedule out your day and say, hey, here's the 1 hour where I'm going to go through these phone calls, and guess what? 90% of those people aren't going to pick up the phone, right? So you might have a few extra conversations a day, right? You just have to do it, and it'll fill the top of your funnel. There's still, value in it. So it really is different for every company, right? If you've got a great seller closing big deals, they might not have the same expectations as a younger seller closing smaller deals who you expect, that kind of hustle out of.
Most certainly. And I think, like you said, I think if you have technology that's showing them where they are lacking, and then they can actually pick up the pace before it's too late to actually catch up on their metrics as well. So I think technology plays a big part in there. So earlier you touched on this whole growth mindset. Can you elaborate a little bit about, obviously you said that's something you look for in candidates that you hire, and I'm assuming you also hold that. Tell us a little bit about the growth mindset that you have, and then how do you train yourself to have it?
Yeah, so there's I think it's Carol Dworkin wrote the book, The Growth Mindset. And it's basically just there's two options you can have when it comes to your mindset. There's a growth mindset, and then there's a fixed mindset. The fixed mindset is, I'm not good at math, or I can't close this business, or I can't make this connection, right? In the case of sales, or I can't make 50 outbound cold calls a day, right? But a growth mindset says that, hey, here's where I am today, right? But I believe I can learn how to be better at math through practice. I can improve my ability to connect with people on the cold calls through practicing and listening to what the best cold callers do and how they're making connections and what they're saying, and exactly, the little tweaks in words of how they're saying it. Tiny, tiny changes to, what you say and the word choice you use can do that. But studying that and being of the open mind that I'm here today, but I can improve within these 60, 90 days, 180 days, a year, 2 years, and get to where I want to be. So you kind of have to be open to practicing, open to failing. And I think everyone struggles with it, right? It's very hard to, again, be comfortable failing and not being good at something when you're just starting to learn a new skill or things like that. But you really, again, going back to the ability to learn being a critical skill and change being ever present, you need that mindset in today's technology world, in today's every world, the way things are speeding up in every industry.
Mm-hmm. So especially in the recruiting phase, how do you screen for a candidate to see if they do possess that growth mindset?
So you can ask them questions about, something they've recently become passionate about. And again, whether it's in their personal life or whether it's in, taking on a new job and their ability to get up to speed in that, role in XYZ days, you can learn about it there. But you really just want to, make sure that they can describe a good experience of not being good at something, deciding, hey, I want to be good at this, and I'm willing to put in the time and the work, and then making it happen.
And who has been the biggest influence on your leadership style? And is there any advice that they provided that kind of comes to your mind?
Let's see. I still think probably the most influential in the past couple of years, person when it comes to sort of my management and business processes is Ray Dalio, and his book Principles is probably it's still.
He's from the financial sector.
He's from the financial sector, but he's, that book, it's a little heavy. It's a big, but it used to be like a 50-page pamphlet. He turned it into a book, and he made a lot of money. Not that he needs more money. But it just really talks about, you want to have conflict at your organization. You want an idea meritocracy is what I always try to instill when I'm having our leadership meetings with our CS and our product and our leadership team, right? You want your executive team to be challenging each other's ideas and poking holes in each other's ideas and arguing over what's best. And then as a team, come to an agreement, because if you're just groveling to, this person because they're really loud or because they've made a few great decisions in the past, but you don't think their decision is the next great step for your company, right? And you just sit down because they did that. You're doing your company a disservice if you think your idea is better, right? And again, everybody thinks their ideas are great, and yours might get shot down, but you need to kind of collaborate with other smart people and poke holes in it and let the best ideas surface via that idea meritocracy.
Yeah, that's a great concept. So obviously we all have one thing we have very limited of, which is time. We all have to get our own personal things done, as well as our whatever responsible things that we have to do for our jobs and our career. So how do you stay productive? Do you have any sort of a productivity hack that you follow?
So I like to wake up early and get a workout in is kind of my first thing. Is you need to I'm a big believer in sound body, sound mind. Right. If I don't get that in, I'm not feeling as good for the rest of the day. I think the other thing that I try to do, but I also fail a lot at, is like time boxing. And there's the idea that multitasking is a myth and it actually makes you way less productive. And I actually agree with that. And that if you can say, hey, for this hour, I'm going to focus on this specific project and only be in this doc and maybe do what's the Pomodoro timer, right? And sit and do something for 25 minutes and then take a 5-minute break and then do that again. And it's challenging because, especially in leadership, you've got all your reps asking you questions and all sorts of fires coming at you from all different directions. So I think blocking specific time where, hey, no, I'm not going to do any meetings, right? You get pulled into so many meetings, but blocking certain time off and saying, here's the biggest tasks that I'm focusing on, and I'm going to focus solely on those, for the next hour, for the next 2 hours, for the rest of this week, and doing that.
Yeah. Knowing what you know today, what advice would you give your younger self?
I mean, I would probably take more risks and I would have started a company, right? I've always dreamed about running a company, and someday I still plan to. But I would do it now because no one's getting any younger. So that would be the first thing is go out there and make your dreams happen and take those risks. I think the other thing, right, work for a startup is another big thing, right? I kind of went an easy or a safe corporate route right after college and worked for, a big conglomerate bureaucracy, and it was soul sucking. It absolutely sucked. I was thinking to myself, this can't be what life is going to be like for the next 40 years. And then luckily I got fired from that job, and I came across a startup that had opened up in the office park where I was in Charlotte, North Carolina, and that was Yodel. And then kind of the rest is history. I've now worked for several early stage VC backed startups, and I love it because you get to design the process, and you're not just following a set thing. You're building something new and figuring out how to make it successful. And you learn as much from failing startups as you do from succeeding startups, right? It's almost good to be a part of both. I've learned as much from ones that weren't going well as I did from ones that went great. And once you do that, you can get good at that. You can negotiate for equity. So that would be the other, big thing is obviously you have the chance to get a nice chunk of companies or stock options where if it does go well, can be lucrative, and you need to learn about those, right? Because a lot of companies try to take advantage and give people, just a set chunk, and you're 23 and you're like, oh, wow, 1,000 options or 10,000 options. And it is what it is. But if you have the ability to get more of those and negotiate for more, right, and you think the company is going places, it can be very lucrative.
Most certainly. Well, Kevin, I certainly appreciate your time. Thanks for sparing this afternoon with me and sharing some of your wisdom with our audience.
Awesome. Anytime.
This episode of Coffee with Closers is brought to you by One IMS. a leading digital marketing agency helping businesses win new customers. To request a free marketing ROI audit, please visit oneims.com. If you enjoyed this video, please share it. To make sure you never miss an episode, please subscribe.